Hello, fellow Nevadans. My name is Amy Kokos. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Associate Director at the Center for Student Engagement at the University of Nevada, Reno. I am honored to welcome all of you to our first Voter Summit for institutions of higher learning in the great state of Nevada. The Nonpartisan Summit is convening college students, faculty, and staff from Nevada's higher education institutions around nonpartisan, campus-wide voter engagements. We hope today's agenda we have put together for you will help you learn, create, and share strategies to support college voter registration, voter education, and of course, voting. This summer, a number of individuals held meetings to talk about this summit. The planning team included members from higher education institutions and a member from the Campus Election Engagement Project. Thank you to that entire planning team for your support and for making today a possibility. I want to thank the support staff from the University of Nevada, Reno from the Center for Student Engagement today who are helping running the technology and making sure everything goes smoothly. Speaking of technology, we've learned a lot for today on bringing the summit to you virtually. We have tested, we have tried different things, and if for some reason our technology goes down, know that we will be quickly working on it to bring it back up. We are recording these sessions today, and it will be available after today's summit, so be on the lookout for follow-up emails with that information. The agenda this morning from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. includes 2 speakers and a student panel. Then we will take a lunch break and come back for the afternoon sessions from 1 to 3 p.m. On the agenda that was emailed out, you will select one session to attend at 1 p.m. and another at 2 p.m. If you did not get the agenda, please email me at amyk@unr.edu and we will get you the link. We have also provided live captioning today, and you're able to turn them on or off on your screen. We did have one change to the agenda session block. The civic engagement, voting, and more moved to the 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. block time, which was originally listed at the 1 p.m. time. So please take note of that change. I do want to thank everyone for attending and supporting democracy in our great nation today. Remember, voting is a big part of democracy, and by getting registered, getting educated, and showing up to vote is very important. We hope the summit will help you in your voting journey, as I know for some of you, this will be the first time voting in an election, which is a great time. I would like to now move to our agenda items so we can start becoming informed on voter education. This morning, we are very lucky to have Wayne Thorley with us. Wayne Thorley is appointed Deputy Secretary of State for Elections for Nevada and is responsible for overseeing the Secretary of State's Elections Division and administering the state's elections processes, including enforcing state and federal election laws and procedures. He has extensive knowledge on a wide range of election-related topics, including campaign finance, military and overseas voting, voter registration, initiatives and referendum petitions, and voting systems. Prior to joining the Secretary of State's office, he worked for the Nevada Legislative Council Bureau for 6 years, where he held a variety of jobs from senior research analyst to fiscal program analyst. He attended the University of Nevada, Las Vegas for both undergrad and graduate school, where he studied economics. We are lucky to have him here with us this morning. Thank you for joining us, Wayne. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. If I can get my video started. It won't let me start my video. Oh, here we go. Well, good morning, everyone. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you all, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. Before I get into my prepared remarks, just want to give a little bit of background about who I am. As Amy mentioned, my name is Wayne Thorley. I am the Deputy Secretary of State for Elections with the Nevada Secretary of State's office. I serve under Secretary of State Barbara Sagaski. In my job, I'm responsible for the administration of all elections in Nevada. So elections for federal office, way on down to elections for local office, such as city council or mayor. We oversee all those elections. We're also responsible for the enforcement of all federal and state election laws. So we make sure the laws around elections, which are extensive, are being followed. In this work, we work extremely closely with the 17 county election officials. So every county in Nevada has a local election official. In Clark and Washoe counties, that person is called the Registrar of Voters. In the other 15 counties, it's the county clerk. The elected county clerk, who is the local election official in their counties. And they really do the heavy lifting when it comes to elections. They maintain the voter registration rolls in their county. They hire the poll workers, they print the ballots. They really are the boots on the ground when it comes to elections. At the state office, we're really providing administrative support, guidance, policy making, rule making, and then making sure the counties are following all the laws. So that's kind of how the distribution of labor works. I'm not a native Nevadan, but I might as well be. I moved to Nevada when I was about 3 years old. I grew up in Las Vegas, went to school at UNLV, liked it so much, stayed and got a second degree. And so very happy to be working in Nevada, and especially in elections and making sure that people can exercise their right to vote. So you may have heard there's an election coming up. Hopefully you all are aware of that. And it's an important election. All elections obviously are important, and this one's no different. But this election's going to be different in the sense that we have a pandemic going on. So the way people vote in this election will be different than from prior elections. And some of you may be first-time voters, which is great if you are, and really excited about that. So you may not have prior voting experience in Nevada to draw on, and you may have some questions. So that's what I'm here for, is to provide information on kind of how the election's going to work in Nevada this year. And I want to specifically focus my remarks on college students and younger voters, so that you all have the information that you need to successfully vote in the election. So obviously the election's on November 3rd, which is less than 2 months away. In Nevada, we will be mailing a ballot automatically to every active registered voter. So if you want to vote by mail, you do not have to request a ballot. It'll automatically be sent to you. But it's important that we send it to where you are. So many of you may be from a different county in the state and are now living in another county that you're not registered to vote in for school, and that's fine. You are able to participate as an absentee voter, and that's not a problem, but we want to make sure your ballot gets to you. So the important thing to make sure is that your mailing address on your voter registration record is up to date, because we will mail your ballot to the mailing address we have on file. Your mailing address can be different than your voter registration address. So let's take a hypothetical example from as a student who grew up in Las Vegas and is now attending school in Reno at UNR. Your voter registration residential address would be your address in Las Vegas, but your mailing address would be your address in Reno. Now, if you want to register to vote in Reno, you can do that also, and then be registered to vote in Washoe County and then have your ballot mailed to you there. But it's up to you, it's your choice. You do not have to change your county that you're registered in simply because you are away at school in a different county. So make sure your voter registration mailing address is up to date, and you can do that online very easily at a website that we have set up for registering to vote and checking your voter registration status. The website is register2votenv.gov. Again, that's register, the word to, T-O, vote, nv.gov. At that website, you can check your voter registration status so you can see your information. And then if you need to make any changes, you can also make changes there. So you can update your address, you can change your party affiliation, whatever you need to do, you can do that all online. And it's important to do that as soon as you can because ballots will be coming out shortly, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But don't delay. We do allow same-day voter registration. But you're definitely encouraged to get registered to vote now. Make sure your information's up to date. So again, that website is register2votenv.gov. Even though all registered voters will be getting a ballot in the mail this year, there are other options for voting if you don't want to vote by mail. So you can vote during the 14-day in-person early voting period. That starts on October 17th and goes through October 30th. So you can do early voting during that 2-week period, or you can vote in person on election day, November 3rd. And on election day, the polls open at 7 a.m. and then remain open till 7 p.m. As long as you're in line by 7 p.m., you will be allowed to vote. So even if there's 50 people in line in front of you, but you get in line right before 7 p.m., we'll stop adding people to the line, but we'll work through the line until everyone that's in line is able to vote. So you don't have to actually have your ballot cast by 7 p.m. You just have to be in line by 7 p.m. on election day. In-person voting is an option. So it's really up to the voter how they want to vote. We are running kind of a hybrid election, I like to call it, where we're supporting vote by mail, but we're also supporting in-person. And it is up to the voter how they want to participate. Every voter is in a little bit different circumstance. So we're not promoting one method over the other. We're just making all options available and then letting the voters decide. In-person voting will be a little different than in prior years. Obviously, our polling places will be spread out to accommodate social distancing. Highly encourage all voters to come wearing a mask. All of our election workers will be wearing personal protective equipment. The hard surfaces and frequently touched surfaces will be cleaned after every use. Our poll workers will have plexiglass separation. So we'll be following all the recommended health safety standards regarding the pandemic, but you can vote in person. So that's the important point I want to get across, is that you can vote in person if you want to. If you vote in person, you will be required to go through what's called ballot surrender. So since we're mailing everybody a ballot, before we let you vote in person, we have to cancel out the ballot that we mailed you. And that's to make sure that nobody votes more than once in the election, which is a felony. You cannot vote more than once in any given election. So the way you can do that is you can actually bring your ballot with you to the polling place, the one that we mail you, and you can just give it to them, the poll workers, and then they'll void it out and cancel it out in the system, and you'll be allowed to vote in person. Or if you don't have your ballot with you, no big deal. You don't have to bring your ballot with you to vote in person. We will void your ballot out in the system that was assigned to you, and we'll just make you sign a short form indicating that you will not vote the mail ballot we sent you, and then you'll be allowed to vote. Even if you misplace your mail ballot or you never got one, you can still vote in person without bringing that mail ballot with you. The counties are all responsible for printing and mailing of ballots. And so what that means is that our counties all have a little different mailing date. So the date that your ballot will be dropped in the mail is dependent on which county you're registered to vote in. Several of our small rural counties will be dropping ballots in the mail later this month, starting on the 24th. However, our large counties, Washoe and Clark, will be a little bit after that. Washoe County, I believe, will be a little, it will still be in September, but more towards the end of the month. And then Clark County in early October. On the Secretary of State's website, our main website, which is nvsos.gov, we have a 2020 elections page. There we have an updated chart of when the counties will be mailing their ballots out. We'll keep updating that table as we get more information in. We also have other information about how to participate in the election in November on that website. Of particular interest is probably the ballot questions. So there will be 5 statewide ballot questions on the ballot this year. And you can read all about those ballot questions on our website so that you can make informed decisions when it comes to casting your ballot in November. So that's all available online. You will all also be receiving a sample ballot. This is not your regular ballot, so it's a separate mailing you'll get. In the sample ballot has lots of information about ballot questions, polling locations, how to vote, what contests will be on the ballot. So it's a great resource. So you'll all be getting a copy of that in the mail, unless you've signed up for electronic absentee ballot delivery, in which case you'll be getting it via email. And if that's something you're interested in doing and going green with your paper, with your absentee ballot, with your sample ballot, definitely check out our website for information about how you can request to get electronic sample ballots. So I wanted to spend my remaining time talking about election security and some processes that you all should be aware of, because there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to voting, and particularly voting by mail. We've allowed voters to vote by mail in Nevada for a long time, which means we've got a lot of processes and procedures already in place to make sure that voting by mail is safe and secure. So if you want to vote by mail, you should feel confident that it is a valid method of voting and that your ballot will be counted as cast. Certainly, we're going to be dealing with a lot more mail ballots this year than we ever had. So the scale is going to be a lot higher, but the processes are all the same. So we're very confident in what we're doing and that everyone's ballots will be counted. The most important security feature we have when it comes to mail voting is the signature on the ballot return envelope. When you get your ballot in the mail, it's going to come in a package, an envelope with several items inside of it. Your actual ballot will be inside. A secrecy sleeve will be inside. You'll get instructions, and your instructions will sometimes be a separate sheet, or the instructions will be printed on your secrecy sleeve, depending on your county. But you will have instructions for how to mark and submit your mail ballot. And then a ballot return envelope will be included, and you must use this ballot return envelope to return your ballot. You can't use someone else's ballot return envelope. You can't use a random envelope that you just purchased from the store. You must use your assigned ballot return envelope, and it's postage prepaid. So if you want to return it by mail, you just drop it in the mail, and there's no cost to you. We will also have a lot of ballot drop-off locations set up throughout the state for voters who want to drop their ballot off in person rather than return it by the mail. That's a valid option also. On the ballot return envelope will be a line for your signature, and every person must sign their absentee ballot return envelope and then return it. If your ballot envelope is not signed, we'll contact you and let you know that you need to sign it. Or if the signature on your absentee ballot return envelope doesn't match the signature we have on file for you, we'll be contacting you and let you know that your signature didn't match. But this is how we verify your identity. This is how we verify that it is actually you who voted your ballot. So when your ballot comes back, we'll compare the signature on your return envelope to the signature we have on file for you as a voter. We've got lots of signatures on file for every voter in this state. Every time you register to vote, every time you vote, we capture your signature and we save it. So we'll look back through your signatures, try and find a match. If it doesn't match, that's not the end of the road. You will be contacted and given an opportunity to cure your signature, which simply means prove your identity, and then your ballot will be counted. So that's an important security feature. You can't just pick a discarded ballot up off the ground and vote it because of the security features we have in place. Principal among them, the signature, but the actual ballots are printed on specialized paper, has to be returned in an authorized ballot return envelope. So there's lots of processes in place to make sure that your voting is secure if you want to vote by mail. On the back end, when ballots are tabulated, it's not much different than what we usually do for in-person voting. Ballots are tabulated at the counting center. That process is done by a bipartisan counting board. It's open to the public if anybody wants to observe the process. Nothing we do is done in secret. All the voting equipment we used is tested and certified and put through some rounds of logic and accuracy testing to make sure they're accurate. We will post election results on election night, but they'll be incomplete. One thing you want to be aware of is if you are voting by mail, you must either return your ballot in person by the close of polls on election day, or you must get your ballot postmarked by election day, which is November 3rd. So in order to get your ballot postmarked on or before election day, you have to have your ballot in the mailbox prior to the last scheduled collection time for that mailbox. And then it'll be postmarked that day. Any ballots that are received after election day, as long as they're postmarked on or before election day, we will count those ballots up to 7 days after the election. So even if you get your ballot in the mail on election day and we don't have that ballot yet, we'll count it. We just have to receive it no later than a week after the election. So you can wait for till the last minute, but highly encourage you not to wait till the last minute. Once you get your ballot in the mail, you can vote it right away if you're ready to vote. There's no waiting period required. So if you know who you want to vote for and you're ready to cast your ballot, you can vote your mail ballot right away and return it right away, and you can be done with voting. You don't have to wait. So definitely, if you're able to vote early, highly encourage you to vote early, because if there is any problems processing your ballot, that would help us resolve those problems well in advance of election day. Lastly, in my remaining time, I want to go over just a couple deadlines about registering to vote. If you're not registered to vote yet, I highly encourage you to get registered to vote. If you're 17 and not yet 18, you can pre-register to vote. You'll be able to vote in the election as long as you turn 18 on or before election day. If you won't be 18 till after the election, that's fine. You can still pre-register to vote. You just won't be eligible to vote in this election. You'll be eligible to vote in all elections after you turn 18. But you can pre-register as a 17-year-old. To register to vote, go to the Secretary of State's website, register to vote, and register to vote nv.gov, and you'll be able to register to vote. You can update your voter registration information. If you're registering to vote online, you want to make sure that you're registered to vote or that you have your address updated if you need to make an address update by October 15th. And that's an important date because you can still make changes after October 15th. You can still register to vote after October 15th. But after October 15th, you'll be required to vote in person. So if you want to get a ballot in the mail and you want to vote by mail, make sure you are registered by midnight on October 15th, and then we'll get you a ballot in the mail. If you miss that deadline, it's not the end of the world. You can still get registered to vote either online or at an early voting or election day polling location. You'll just be required to vote in person rather than by mail. So October 15th, keep that in mind and don't delay. I know that's over a month away, but get registered to vote now. That way you'll ensure that you'll receive your ballot. So I think I'm at my time, but thank you again very much for inviting me. You can get much more information at the Secretary of State's website, nvsos.gov. And certainly contact the Secretary of State's Elections Division if you have any questions. We'll be more than happy to guide you through the process.
Thank you so much, Wayne. You provided such great information for everybody who's watching this live and who'll be watching this recording. I just want to say that the website is wonderful to navigate. I know you all have been putting in long hours and work to make sure all of this stuff is ready for the election cycle. So thank you for all of your hard work. And sharing this great information. Remember, everybody, update your address. That's really important. Make sure you know the options for voting, and some deadlines that were shared by Wayne. I think one thing, Wayne, I didn't ask you to talk about, but I'll just plug here because I think it's important, is poll workers.
Yes.
I think the state needs some poll workers. I know I signed up for the day of, and do you want to share anything about poll workers and the need in our state?
I will. Thank you, Amy, and thank you for that reminder. Yes, all the counties are in search of poll workers. Normally, our poll workers skew older, so most of our poll workers are elderly. However, this year, because they are at higher risk of complications related to COVID-19, we are trying to recruit more younger poll workers. And I know it can be difficult because of work and school schedules. But if you're able to, highly encourage you to sign up to be a poll worker. If you want more information about what the requirements are, it's a paid position. We call our poll workers volunteers, but we do pay them. If you want more information about that, you can go to workelections.com. Again, that's workelections.com. Click on the state of Nevada, and it'll bring up the information for Nevada and then the county you want to work in. And yes, our county election officials would love for more younger poll workers to sign up. And if you enjoy it, hopefully it'll become something you do year after year. So yeah, if it's something you're interested in, definitely check out that website and see if it makes sense with your schedule and what you have going on.
Great. Thank you so much, Wayne. We appreciate your time here today. Again, thank you to you, your staff, to the secretary, everybody. Please let them know that we appreciate all the work that you're doing for Nevadans so that they have access to the ballot. And so we appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go vote, everyone.
Great. So now we're going to transition to our next speaker, Camille Martin. I first met Camille about a year ago when we collaborated on a presentation for the NASPA Multicultural Institute in New Orleans. This is really where I came to appreciate the work that Camille and other nonprofits are doing to support campuses across the country. Camille is Voto Latino's Partnership Associate, where she supports relationships with local and university chapters, as well with corporate and nonprofit grassroots groups. Camille is a native Texan born in El Paso. She is a recent Southwestern graduate and currently serves on the University Board of Trustees. As a student, Camille devoted considerable attention to efforts in civic engagement, involving herself in the co-faculty sponsorship research and leading programming to engage her community in voting efforts and discussions. Thank you so much, Camille, for being with us today. I want to give you a chance to turn on your video. There you go. And I know you do have a PowerPoint that you want to share. So if you want to get that started, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm getting this PowerPoint started up. Hopefully you all can see it now. Awesome. Well, thank you for that incredible introduction, Amy. I'm so excited to be here today and honestly very enthused to talk about one of my favorite subjects, reaching voters in digital spaces. As Amy mentioned, I work on the partnerships team at Voto Latino Foundation, and I'm really excited to just dive in. So I will go ahead and do that. Here's a brief outline of what I'll be speaking to today. I'd love first to talk about our work at Voto Latino Foundation. Second, I'll be talking about digital organizing, about how we really made the transition back in March in our organization, and how hopefully you all can think through and make the transition to reach voters online. Third and lastly, I'll give you all 3 tangible ways to reach voters in digital spaces where they're at. With that being said, I'll go ahead and dive in. So about our work. As Amy mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization that seeks to educate, empower Latinx individuals, predominantly aged 18 to 34, as they really do have buying power in many national elections. An interesting statistic is that Latinos will be the 2nd largest voting bloc in 2020 for the first time this election. A Latino turns 18 years old every 30 seconds here in the United States. And that, adds up to many eligible voters who are, US citizens aged 18 plus all around the country. Some important statistics to note is that, as mentioned, a majority of Latinos are, 18, 19 years old, as compared to whites who are 54-year-old. This just shows that young people especially have so much buying power and a say to decide, elections, election results, and to create real impactful change in their communities. Our studies have found that when registered, Latinos do vote. So that's why our organization predominantly works to make sure that Latinos are registered and ready to vote. As of August 15th, our organization has registered 250,000 new voters just this year alone. We have, the goal this year to register 500,000 voters this election, which is super exciting. I'm happy to report that we're on track to do so. As of today, we've registered, this large number right here at the screen, 283,000 plus voters. We're really excited to keep this momentum going and to make sure that, everyone who is eligible is able to cast a ballot this November. Just a really, important statistic that I do want to share. Our organization has seen a 2,750% jump in voter registrations since the killing of George Floyd and since, the start of so many Black Lives Matter movements and protests across the country. This just shows that Gen Z, my generation, we are really, plugged into the issues that impact and matter to our communities, and that we want to take direct action to create change, right? So just this jump, as, kind of statistics nerd, makes me super excited and happy, and we're really just excited to carry this momentum forward throughout this election. With that, all that being said, I know that was a lot of numbers, a lot of level setting, but very excited to speak to digital organizing. First, I'll talk about my segue into digital organizing. I was a grassroots organizer at my university campus back in the 2018 cycle, worked with faculty, staff, and fellow students to host a polling site on our campus. We even hosted, a election day festival, which was super fun, gave out shirts, food, really just like celebrated democracy. It was a lot of fun. But with that being said, these events and these opportunities aren't plausible anymore due to COVID-19. But, I'm here to say that you can use the same energy, the same momentum, the same excitement to organize your peers online. So with that being said, I'd love to speak to what we're doing at Voto Latino, and then I'll advise on tips and tricks that you can use on your campus to organize in digital spaces. As mentioned a couple slides earlier, our organization is working to register 500,000 folks by the November 3rd election. That'll bring our organizational total to 1 million voters registered in the 15 years that we've been around. With that being said, we are really, excited to be making unique voter contact with these 1 million contacts that we have in our network. We will do this over text banking. The majority of folks we register are 18 to 34. 70% of those folks are women, which I think is really important to note. But these people will be reached over text on their phone, right? I know for myself personally, I will be much more likely to engage and respond to a text message rather than a phone call. With that being said, we're doing 3 different types of voter outreach, and we'd absolutely love for you to volunteer with us if you're interested in seeing what this is like. We use Hustle, which is a peer-to-peer texting tool where you're able to have unique conversations with voters. We use Slack to create community with our volunteers, provide troubleshooting support day of. If you're interested in joining us, definitely click this link right here, votolatino.org/get involved. Even if you just head to our website, votolatino.org, you'll be able to navigate this pretty easily. But I do want to say we do vote tripling text banks where we're increasing voter registration and turnout with our contacts, friends, and families. I'll get to vote tripling later in this presentation, but it's a really fun and easy tactic to get out registration numbers. We'll be encouraging Latinx voters to vote by mail this elections in states that it's safe to do so, as this is the safest option to register to vote during COVID-19. We'll be sending out early voting reminders to states where vote by mail isn't as accessible as it is in Nevada, which is so incredible. But this is just a taste of what our Get Out the Vote voter contact will look like, and we hope that you'll join us in texting folks. But how did we come to this lofty goal of reaching out to 1 million voters over text message? We broke it down with the 6 below bullets, and I hope that you'll use this to really think through how your organizing will work on campus, whether it be to register folks, make sure that they have their address changed for their absentee ballot, whatever it may be. The first thing to think through is organizational goals or your campus goals. Think about short-term and long-term goals. The short-term goal could be, hey, I want to register 5 people to vote by the end of the week, 5 of my students to vote by the end of the week. A long-term goal can be, all right, by the end of the cycle, I'm registering 30 folks. Definitely really helps to break that down. It's really important to think about reach, I think. When I was a student organizer back in 2018, I really thought through, how can I make sure every single student on our campus is getting a message about how important it is to vote, right? I went to small liberal arts schools, so I will say there was a lot of segmented social groups, just as there are on any campus, right? So really worked one-on-one with the Student Athletics Association, worked with Greek Life, with our Student Diversity and Social Justice Coalition, with campus departments, with every facet of campus to make sure that their students were receiving messaging about, first and foremost, registering to vote, and as 2018 looked different, making sure that they knew about our student polling site that would be available to them to cast their ballot. Capacity is super important too. It's really, vital to think through how many student organizers you have, how many faculty members are helping out, how many staff members are helping out, and just, dividing and conquering, making sure that this messaging goes out to every segment on campus. It's important to identify current gaps that you may have, and I'll be, going over this more with our digital organizing that we advise. It's also important to think about tools that will help you digital organize, and it's important to think about community barriers. So to think about, possibly the population of students who wouldn't be, as able to view online messaging, things like that. I know there's a lot on this slide. We'll just point out a couple, but here are some free and paid tools that you can use to really kick off your virtual organizing this election cycle. There's a lot of great momentum happening on WhatsApp. I think that's really interesting to note. But, my favorite tools to use are Asana. It's a project management site that is free and super easy to use. It would be a great way to divide work and clearly define who's responsible of what, right? So I think what worked well with my campus voting initiative cohort was that we were very open and clear about, who had ownership of what project, who had ownership of what contact, whatever that may be. Asana is a great tool to help you think through that. I will also say, I'm sure everyone here knows how to use social media. I will go over it later in this presentation, but social media is so important for digital organizing. I didn't know about Twitch until, we started quarantining at home. It's a great, service to use to stream events that may not live on Instagram or Facebook, and just really thinking through, how can I get registering to vote and get out the vote messaging from my campus out in the social media sphere. With that being said, my favorite part, let's talk through how you can reach voters in digital spaces. What's super important is making the voter registration ask. Registering others to vote in digital spaces can seem intimidating, but it totally doesn't have to be. It all comes down to approach. I will stress this, approach is key when you're making the voter registration ask. I think what's so characteristic and awesome about Gen Z, our generation, is that we are really, using social media as a way to advocate and think through issues that are directly impacting us. So in the way that maybe if you are super vocal on your social media that you would talk about an issue that matters to you, try talking about voting, connecting it to voting. Always give your followers or, whoever it is that you may be talking about the resources and tools to either check their registration status, register to vote, whatever it may be. Be sure that whatever you're talking about is easily understood and digested, but also can be actionable. So here's a really cool tool that we've set up for you to use. If you do have your phone next to you, definitely give this a try. We'd love for you to text NV votes to our number 73179. This is just a super interactive way that you can make sure that your friends are registered to vote. Once you text, again, NV votes to our number 73179, a voter registration form will be texted right back to you. This is a super, again, easy way to use Nevada's great digital online registration platform. And it's an easy way to remember, where to send people to get registered to vote. Again, pull out your phone, text Nevada votes to 73179. I'll be moving on to the next slide, but this is a great, resource to keep in your toolbox as you digitally organize. This is pretty simple, should be a given, but link in bio always. Link in bio is so important in any type of organizing or information sharing you're doing. This link is free for your all's use. It's just a bit.ly of a voter registration form, so bit.ly/NV_votes. Feel free to give us a follow on Instagram. I absolutely love our Instagram, but in our bio, we link a voter registration form. It's a super easy way to level set, right? So if, the Student Athlete Association on your campus makes a post about voting and how important it is to cast a ballot, be sure that they have, a voter registration link on hand that they can link in their bio and direct folks to take action. Again, this link is ready and available for your use if you're looking for, a shorthand code to share with folks on your campus. Another super easy way to, register voters online is to shoot an email, especially if you're a staff member, faculty member, or in leadership position for a campus organization with a built-out email list. Try shooting an email to make sure that everyone within your network is prepared and registered to vote. Here's an email template that you can feel free to use. It's just stressing how important this election is, making conversation about the issues that matter. And as mentioned before, it includes this link, right, to make sure that people take direct action. The registration process online is super easy to complete, takes about 2 minutes. And again, our link that is shared here on this page redirects to the Nevada Secretary of State's office, which is an incredible tool for voters to use to make sure that their registration's up to date. Well, we're at the end of our presentation, but as the moral of the presentation was to always give people direct actions to take, I'm gonna ask you all to take direct action with me right now. We're gonna vote triple. So with that being said, pull out your phone and get ready to shoot some text messages. So I'd love for you all to write down or think of 3 names of people that you'd like to register to vote. They may be, you know, the last 3 people you've shot a text message to, your mom, your aunt, your boyfriend, your best friend, whoever it may be. Have them in your mind and ready. Again, pull out your phone and let's shoot them some texts. So here's a suggested script, you know, leaving it up to you as you have the relationship with them, right? But this is a great way to reach voters where they're at again, right? To meet people right on their phone. Here's a suggested script that you can send. Again, it includes that direct action link, and ask them if they're registered to vote, if they need to update their registration, to take 2 minutes to do so. We're really excited. I hope that this brings in some new voters. We'll definitely update you all if so, but again, just always, when you're engaging with and talking to voters in digital spaces, think innovatively, think creatively, and just, again, remember to meet people where they're at. Well, I want to thank you all so much for giving me the time to speak today. Again, feel free to reach out to me. My email is super easy. It's my first name, Camille, at votolatino.org. If you have any questions about what I spoke about or want to receive the link, the text code, whatever it may be, I look forward to talking to some of you all. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you for organizing your community and making a direct impact.
Great. Thank you, Camille. We'll give you a minute here to stop sharing your screen. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming with us today. I just texted everybody that I work with. I know they're all registered to vote, but I just texted them so that they are aware and can spread the message to others. So I appreciate those tips for some online organizing and getting people together in digital spaces. And it's definitely a new lens that we need to look at for this work, right? Being able to, you know, we can't always just go out and table as much as we've done in the past. And so we have to be thinking of new ways to reach voters. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye. Now we're going to turn it over to our student panel. I am so thankful for the work and dedication for the civic engagement for the person that I'm getting ready to introduce next. Alexa Rangel is a senior with a dual major in international affairs and Spanish at the University of Nevada, Reno. She grew up in Las Vegas and is the director of the Department of Legislative Affairs here in the student government, ASUN, here at the University of Nevada, Reno. And she works on all things civic engagement. I asked her about a month ago to be a part of this student panel. Then 2 weeks ago, I said, could you be the moderator of the student panel? And she, of course, agreed and stepped up. So I'm so thankful for that, Alexa, and your leadership. Alexa has done so much work of writing up the questions for the panel today, working with everybody so that they're ready to answer, and making sure that we have a cross-representation from the state of Nevada. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alexa to introduce everyone from the panel.
Hi guys, thank you Amy so much for that introduction. I am so excited to be here. Like Amy said, my name is Alexa Rangel and my pronouns are she, her, hers. So I will be the moderator today, which is really excited. Today we have some amazing student representatives from all over Nevada. We have Suman from NSC, Maggie from TMCC, Paige from UNR, and I believe, yeah, and that's it for our student panels. We had 2 others, but they unfortunately couldn't make it today, which is okay because we'll still have a lot of fun. So I'll let them introduce themselves and then we can get started with the questions. If you guys could please tell us where you're from, your pronouns, what you're studying, and your title as a student leader if you have one. Yeah, we can start with Suman.
Thank you. I want to start off by saying thank you so much for having me here today to share my perspective. And I want to thank all the faculty, staff, and fellow students for giving voting the importance that it deserves. So my name again is Suman Randawa. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm attending Nevada State College and also just having the honor of serving as the student body president of Nevada State Student Alliance and also the co-president of Ignite, the national chapter at Nevada State College. And so I am a senior, so I'm double majoring, so I always get confused if I'm a junior or senior, but I think I'm senior. So senior, double majoring in psychology and communication with an emphasis in media studies, and a social justice minor. And thank you again for having me here today.
Thank you, Sumar. We're so excited to have you. Next, we'll have Maggie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to be here and talk to you all about the importance of voting. I'm Maggie Dostal. I currently attend Truckee Meadows Community College. I'm a senator for student government, a SEEP fellow, and I'm just super excited to get to see you all.
Thank you. And then we'll have Paige.
Hello everyone, super excited to be here. My name is Paige Flippin. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm the current ASUN Attorney General here at the University of Nevada, Reno. I'm also involved in other social justice clubs on campus as well. I'm really excited to talk to you all about voting today.
Thank you, Paige. All right, so let me put my questions here. So basically how this is gonna go, I'm going to ask the panelists, two of them will have the same question at a time, and then they'll give us their responses. So my first question today is for Suman. What are some ways we can help educate people about voting and the significance of it?
Thank you, Lexa, for that question. It's a great question. Once again, my name is Suman Randawa. So I personally believe that we should grow up with learning about civics and politics in school and in our education. So I'd like to see more of that happen in the future. But as far as for all of us, I know that for me, like I'm still learning, you know, that this topic, when it comes to voting and politics, it can be overwhelming. But, you know, with the current climate we're facing with the pandemic, and as far as having events in person are far and few in between, but it also, we're finding unique ways to connect with everyone. So whereas before we might have had the issue of transportation, maybe people, you know, a lot of people work, so that makes it harder to try to reach a wider audience. So having the virtual platform actually does make it easier, so we are able to reach a wider audience of people. So holding virtual forums, connecting with faculty, other students, and trying to gather together in collective voices and doing some sort of virtual forum, partnering up with a local organization, like one that I really value in Vegas. It's called Plan Nevada. And so that's something that I think would be helpful. And then also just starting a social media campaign. You know, we do live in the world of social media, and right now we're using it more than ever. So that would be another good way of connecting with others. And then just as simple as talking to friends, family, colleagues, fellow classmates about the importance of voting. And I think that would make a huge impact. And I would even go so far to see if you can talk to campus leadership if they're willing to address this and have a virtual event where students can ask questions, any concerns that are related to voting, and really get them excited about it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like that idea about reaching out to campus leadership. I know here you and I we're working on some events, so that's exciting. Awesome. I'm going to ask the same question to Maggie. So what are some ways you think we can help educate people about voting and the significance of it?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alexa, for the question. Again, my name is Maggie Dostal. It's often said that as citizens of the United States, voting is our civic duty. But what does that really mean? Voting hasn't always been a default right for Americans. It was amended to the Constitution so we could create a balance between popular and congressional votes. But more importantly, it's for the public's voice to be heard. And it's important now more than ever for the public's voice to be heard because it's such that influences the future of our country. Every voice and every vote matters, and in the long run, it all makes a difference. It doesn't matter how young you are, how old you are, or even what you really believe in. There's always something you can do to make sure your voice is heard. So, which brings me to my next topic. How can we educate people about the importance of voting and really spread electoral engagement? One of the most important things anyone can do is to be informed. Read up on candidates, electoral issues, political issues, both local and national. You can't forget about your local elections because those are super important in the whole grand scheme of things. But overall, just be educated about what's going on with the elections. Another thing that everyone can do is to talk to people you know, people you don't know, even if it's in a digital space or if it's through just any social media platforms or virtual events like Suman had mentioned. If you support a particular party, a candidate, you can work for them, you can volunteer for them, whether it's through phone banks, outreach, or campaign headquarters. There's always something that you can do to make sure you're getting out there and making sure your voice is heard. Your work, no matter how big or how small, can help get candidates elected, even if you aren't able to vote yourself. So like I said, you don't have to be 18 or older to make your voice heard, specifically at the polls. You can still be engaged in the electoral process. And so just to kind of bring that all together, participating in elections is one of the key freedoms we have as Americans. Most people in other countries don't have the same freedom, nor did Americans in centuries past. So no matter what you believe in, who you support, I cannot stress how important it is to exercise your rights.
Thank you so much, Maggie. That was amazing. Really appreciate that answer. So my next question is for Paige. Yours is going to be different. Why don't more people vote in the United States? What factors keep people out of the electoral process?
Thank you for that question, Alexa. Once again, my name is Paige Flippin. So reasons people don't vote in the United States, primarily I feel like have to do with, one, feeling like their voices don't matter. A lot of people think like, oh, I'm just one person, so if I don't vote, it doesn't really change anything. And I also think that people in our two-party system have a hard time getting excited about certain candidates. And if they're not excited, they're not motivated to go out and vote. I think those are like pretty much the two main reasons I found that people don't vote in the United States, at least for people who I'm surrounded by. And I think stemming back to the whole, I'm just one person, I'm not going to make a difference. If everyone thought like that, we wouldn't have elections. So it's hard to see in the grand scheme of things, like how you as one person can have such an impact. But if everyone thought that way, we wouldn't have elections at all. And I think factors that keep people out of the electoral process, the main one is like voter registration. A lot of people don't know that you have to register to vote, or some states don't even have like same day registration or online registration. So it's a really hard process for some people to get into because they're not sure exactly how voter registration works and things like that. Also, as Maggie mentioned, in the past, people haven't always had this right to vote. And so marginalized groups are finding it harder and harder to get involved in this voting process because it wasn't something that was even an opportunity for them in the past. But yeah, that is all I have to say about that.
No, for sure. I've seen those factors as well. Thank you. I believe we have a panelist that just joined us a little late. Her name's Fernanda. Are you here, Fernanda?
Yes, hi everybody.
Hi.
I apologize. I had a hard time getting on the call. My name is Fernanda Cardenas. I go to TMCC, Truckee Meadows Community College with Maggie. I am a SEEP worker, a SEEP fellow, and I also work in the student government office.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. Actually, my next question is for you. It'll be the same one as Paige. So why don't more people vote in the United States? What factors keep people out of the electoral process?
That's a great question. I think there's just a lot of misinformation spread about the way that elections are done, especially right now with, mail-in voting, which we'll talk about later. But I think a lot of people are just, I feel like many people have either voted in the past and felt like their voice hasn't been heard, or they were already disillusioned when they started getting old enough to engage in the electoral process. Unfortunately, a lot of people, including I think our generation, I think we grow up hearing so many things about the elections and about us not getting our needs met with these elections that people become quickly disinterested and disillusioned because their needs just aren't being met. And I think that has a really, really big hand in how people participate, because if they think that their voice isn't being heard and they think that their voice doesn't matter and that their vote doesn't matter, they're much less likely to engage in anything. And you can't really blame them for that. You know, it's very difficult for people to be able to get to a point where they really do understand that it's so important to engage democratically.
No, for sure. I've seen that as well. Thank you for that answer. Really appreciate it. So we're going to go back to Suman, and I'm going to ask, what does voting mean to you? Just give us like a personal experience, or just, give us your meaning or definition of what voting is.
So again, thank you, Alexa, for that question. Great question. So what voting means to me, I just think that being a woman, I think it's really, really important that everyone's voice is represented and you do get a choice, and one of those is by voting. So being a woman, I feel an immense amount of gratitude towards the women before me that paved the way and allowed for future generations of women to have the ability to vote. So I take it as a great responsibility and privilege to have that choice and have that ability to exercise my right to vote. So I think to me, voting is, I don't want to take it for granted. I recently read a statistic where it said 50% of women in the United States, or 51% are women population in the United States, but less than a quarter are elected officials. So that's just going after the fact that, like, more and more women need to not only exercise the right to vote, but should take on political leadership roles. And so I think just over the last couple of years is when I really started to get more actively involved, I would say, more in civics, and just realizing the value that it has, that it's important for us to be in these spaces where, policies and laws affect us. So I think it just starts with something very small as voting. It seems like it's not that important, but it is. So that's what voting means to me.
No, for sure. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's actually interesting that you bring that up. I saw a post on Instagram the other day about if we were to remove men from politics, and then they got rid of all the men in the picture, and it was like 3 women. So it was very interesting to see. Thank you. Next question is for you, Maggie. Same question. What does voting mean to you? What's your definition of it?
I think voting it's a really great privilege. Just to kind of echo what Suman said, it's a really great privilege for citizens. And like I had mentioned earlier, voting hasn't always been a right for us in the United States. And so I think that it's something that we should take very seriously and that everyone should participate in, because I do believe that every voice should be heard and every voice does matter in the whole process, because like I said, it's our future on the line. If you don't vote, then you're not advocating for what you believe in. You're not standing up for what you think should be the future for all of us.
I agree. Thank you. And then we'll move on to Paige. Actually, yeah, so I guess we'll ask that one too, because I have you under here as well for that question. I think we're just going to ask everybody this question because I think it's very important to get your guys' definitions of it. So what does voting mean to you?
Thank you for that question. Voting to me, I'm echoing what Maggie and Suman have said. It's honestly like a privilege. I also see it as like my civic duty as an American citizen. It allows me to just be like an active participant in our democracy and not someone who's, complacent and doesn't take action into their own hands. I also think like if if people are making decisions about my body, about my education, about my facility as a human, I should have a say in those discussions. And so voting is the way that we have a say in what happens to us as humans. So I think if you're not voting, if you're not actively participating in it, you're really giving permission to other people to regulate you as a person.
Thank you. And same question for you, Fernanda.
I absolutely agree with Paige. I think that especially as women, too often we aren't given a choice and decisions are made for us. And I think voting is such an incredible privilege that I think we're all starting to understand a little bit more, because I think for a very long time we took that for granted. I unfortunately will not be able to vote in the next election. I am too young, but the moment I registered to the moment that I turned 17, I think it is so important as a minority, as a child of immigrants. All of these decisions are not just for me; they're for my family. All of the votes that I make, all of the choices that I mark on that ballot matter something to me, mean something to me, and also I just think anybody that doesn't have the privilege that I have, so people that are undocumented in the United States, we get to be able to help them through voting. And that's super important to me, is using my privilege to make the world a better place.
Yes, I agree 100%. Thank you so much for that, which is a perfect segue to my next question. Suman, how can we get underrepresented groups more involved when it comes to voting?
Thank you, Alexa, for that great question. When it comes to underrepresented groups, I think a lot of the times it's just getting people empowered and inspired. Oftentimes they don't feel like their voice matters, and they don't feel like that, what they have to say matters, and no one's going to listen to them. So again, we pose some unique challenges with not being able to meet people in person and having to do everything through this virtual platform. But I think with the underrepresented groups is just finding out, just talking to people and finding out, what it is that's important to them, and giving them that reassurance that, hey, your voice does matter and what you believe does matter, and encouraging them to vote and getting them to tell others that are in the same type of position, getting them to also vote.
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna ask this question to everyone too, because I think it's just really important. As a person of color, I understand the importance of reaching out to underrepresented groups. So we'll move on, and I'm gonna ask everyone this too. So Maggie, what are some ways we can engage underrepresented groups?
Thank you for the question. Many racial minority groups are severely underrepresented in local, state, and federal government. And so I think it's really imperative that we get all people, no matter who they are, where they come from, to be a part of the electoral process. So I think Suman hit some really great points. We really need to reach out to those people, make it a big deal, find out what they support, really get them to engage in it, because like I said, every voice does matter. So getting every voice to participate in the whole process makes a really big difference on how things play out in the end. So like if it's going into that neighborhood, doing door-to-door, conversing with them, just trying to get them involved in as many ways as we can. Because even underrepresented groups, they may not have access to social media or technology that may help them get in that kind of atmosphere. So I think being able to speak to people and maybe like putting up posters, getting the word out to them, making them know that their voice should be heard, that it's important that their voice is heard, and that they're involved in the whole process is really important.
Perfect, thank you. Paige, how can we get underrepresented groups more involved?
So I think the first thing we have to do is recognize that there are still systems in progress right now that are actively keeping these voters out. And I think really we should be pushing for like lobbying against these oppressive like voting laws, especially in some of the more conservative states that have very, very stringent like voter registration laws. Those are like some of the most prevalent ways that people are being kept out, especially like minority racial groups. So yeah, I think voting for like automatic voter registration, pushing for automatic voter registration would be like one of the huge ways to get rid of that initial barricade that even like allows them into the voting realm. And then also, like Suman said, just getting people empowered. A lot of underrepresented groups just don't identify with people who are running for office or don't identify with certain issues. So directly speaking to them and directly empowering them would allow them to get.
Thank you. And then Fernanda, how can we get underrepresented groups more involved?
That's a fantastic question. I agree with Paige. I think that we as a society, we as Americans have to acknowledge that there are still systems in place that make it incredibly difficult to reach these minority groups or to reach underrepresented groups. I think accessibility is one of those really big problems that we have that is very systemic, whether it be there aren't enough polling places in underrepresented communities, or people that have disabilities can't make it to the polls, or they don't have the information to request absentee voting or mail-in voting. I think also empowerment is such a very big part of voting. I know that's why I care so much about voting, because it empowers me. And I think that going into these communities and telling them that they have a stake in what happens to them and in what happens in their community is incredibly important. And I think that it's also very important to not count out conservative states or conservative communities, because oftentimes they also don't have all of the information, and so they feel left behind. And so it's incredibly important that we go in not as like, oh, you guys are conservatives or closed-minded. It's important that we go in and try to educate people as much as possible instead of lecture people. I think often people confuse the two. And I think that if we keep in the forefront of this movement, because it is a movement that we're trying to start, if we keep at the forefront that we're just trying to educate people and empower people to become democratically engaged, that we can get more people to be excited about voting and to think of it as something that that is their duty.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So my next question is, what are the advantages of allowing voters to vote early or using absentee ballots? Or what are the disadvantages? Why might a state choose to have early voting or use absentee ballots? And then why might a state not have such policies? I know that's a lot. Suman?
I'm going to be honest here. I don't have all the information for this, so I wouldn't even know where to start.
That's totally okay. Is there anyone that wants to speak on this? Yeah, go for it.
I think states that are rural, like Nevada, it might be a lot easier for to use mail-in voting or absentee voting, just because it can be very difficult to put polling places in every area where it's needed. Everything is a little bit more spaced out and therefore a little bit more difficult to coordinate. I think states that or even communities that have accessibility problems, as in people that are disabled or a high population of elderly people, it might just be simpler and it allows them more accessibility to be able to vote than to have to take themselves to polling places. I think it's especially useful for, when people can't drive, etc. It just creates a level of accessibility that, walking yourself or driving yourself to a polling place doesn't allow.
That's that's 100% true. I know it's a big topic right now with COVID and everything, which then leads me into my next question. What are your guys' thoughts in terms of mail-in voting in our current political climate? I know it's a lot going on, talked about in the news and everything. So I just want to get your guys' perspectives on it. And then this one, feel free to jump in. It's not designated to specifically anyone.
Okay, I'll speak. Personally, I believe there is a lot of legitimate concern regarding mail-in ballots. It leaves a lot of room for fraud, abuse, and just so many other things that have been proven to go wrong. I know that we had a speaker earlier talking about mail-in voting, so I feel like I'm kind of discounting everything he's saying. But I do feel like it's not one of the best options. I think that there's not enough checks and balances on the whole process, the whole system of it all, for it to be considered an adequate alternative to voting at the polls. So I think that I probably lean more towards advocating for early voting or for voting in person, because I think it's a much stronger and proven alternative to mail-in voting.
Thank you. Yeah, Fernanda?
I would like to respectfully disagree. I think there have been a lot of studies, and there's been a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, especially in the past couple of months, about mail-in voting being unsafe. The only problem we're having right now is, the postal office, how that might go, and how much we can trust it, just because they aren't getting the funding that they need from the government currently. But I think there's been a lot of research and a lot of information about how safe mail-in voting is, because there is a system to how everything is done. Earlier, when Thorley was talking about this, and he did talk about how many systems are in place to make sure that everything is counted, that every vote is counted, that fraud isn't something that happens. And he was talking about, if you're voting in person, your ballot gets voided. Your mail-in ballot gets voided. Sorry. So I think that, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation spread, and currently by our own administration as well. So that's quite disheartening. But I think that, by educating people and by telling people, it's a safe option, it is your vote will be counted. As he said, you could mail in your ballot on election day and still have it counted. I just think that, unfortunately, like I said, and I think like a lot of us have heard, there's just been a lot of misinformation, and it scares people. It's a scare tactic. It's a fear tactic. This idea that your vote isn't safe in the hands of the people that, are responsible for it. And I think that is unfortunately something that we're going to have to inform people about and inform voters on, that their vote is safe.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for those answers. I see both sides, definitely. Is there, oh yeah, go ahead, Suman.
No worries. I was going to say the same thing as you, Alexa. I can see both sides of it, so I've heard both sides of it. I personally think that being able to vote via mail is actually a good thing in our situation, because we're in a global pandemic, one. And two, I really do think that we might get more voters in this year, because it allows more accessibility for people that wouldn't normally be able to wait in line for 3 hours to vote, or might not have the ability to get transportation to go somewhere and vote. So I think with that and keeping that in mind, I think that we actually do have some hope that we'll be able to get more voters out there.
Yes, for sure. It is a little bit more accessible for people, especially in this pandemic. So it's a lot to consider, definitely. Thank you for that. So I guess we can move on. My next question. So if you have voted, what factors helped you make the decision to do so? And if you did not, but could have, why did you decide not to? How do these factors compare to the expectations of downs? Oh, ignore that last part, sorry. Just so like, if you did not or could have, why didn't you? And then if you did vote, why did you? And we'll do that one to you, Suman.
So I always find it challenging, especially when it comes to the local level. I really wish that our representatives would do a better job of campaigning, maybe meeting people in person. So it does make it challenging on like, who do I vote for? I don't even know who this person is. So it is challenging. I like to try to talk to friends that and family that are a little bit more politically engaged and happen to know a little bit more about the candidates. I'll ask them questions like, why do you want to vote for this person? That kind of helps me make a decision, and just reading up on the candidates, right? Like, what's their background? What have they done? Does it match up with the things that are important to me? So that, I think, really helps me make the decision. It can be challenging because there's like a ton of people you have to sift through. In this, I'm just talking about in the local, local elections, and then going on to state and then the national. So I think just doing your due diligence, asking around, we are in the world of Google where we can easily get access to all of this information, and just making sure that you're getting your information from credible sources. So that's been helpful for me.
Thank you. And I'll ask that to you, Maggie, as well. Maggie, excuse me.
Oh, thank you. I'm 17, so I still haven't voted, but I did register to vote as soon as I could because I do believe in the power of the vote. So I'm still in the process of reading up about all the political issues and the candidates and all of the work they've done that has qualified them for the position. And I do think that being informed about all of the candidates, both local and national, is one of the most important things any voter, any person in general can do, just so you're really informed about who they are, the work they've done, and what makes them qualified for the position they're running for, and if they really are qualified for that. And I think Suman hit a great point. Just doing your due diligence, really knowing what you're signing up for or who you're voting for is just super important. And speaking with people who have expertise about the issue, getting your information from those credible sources, because there's a lot of not credible sources out there that have really influenced people's opinions about the whole electoral process and who's running. So I think just really make sure you're getting the right information so you can make those informed decisions.
Yes, thank you. And then my next question is for Paige. In what ways, other than voting, can people participate in the political process? And then what are the strengths and weaknesses of each kind of activity?
Thank you for that question. I think the main way is to just volunteer. Every political organization under the sun is looking for volunteers all the time. That's like the main way I would say to get involved. I think the pros of that is you see like the direct impact that you're having on people's lives, like through phone banks or through, canvassing, or like you get to see that impact that you're having. So volunteering is definitely like my main suggestion. Also, like there's social media campaigns that you can do. You can be sharing information. You can get involved with different like coalitions. What else? Getting involved like on campus to get people registered to vote, helping out with events like this. There's so many different ways that you can get involved in the political process. But I think just volunteering would be like my main suggestion.
Perfect, thank you. And then same question for you, Fernanda. In what ways other than voting can people participate in the political process, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of each activity?
So I agree with Paige. I think that volunteering is one of the best ways that people can get involved. I think also, just advocating for things that you believe in, really doing the research and becoming a person that advocates in issues that are important to you and into your community. Not being afraid to, have those conversations with people. And of course, I think volunteering has the most, probably has the most impact, just because you are doing the dirty sorry, not that expression. You are doing the dirty work, you are getting in there, you are working hard, and you are really, up close seeing all of the action. But I think that, even just educating yourself and informing the people around you, whether it be your mom, your dad, uncles, cousins, etc., friends, you are, injecting a little bit of information into your daily life is incredibly important. I think anybody has the opportunity to be an advocate. It's not something that's like an exclusive club. So I think advocacy is a really, really good way to go as well.
Perfect, thank you. And so that actually concludes my questions. We finished a little early, which is great. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we go? I know for me that voting is so important. So I would just like to have our participants watching us right now to have these discussions to continue doing the efforts and, reach out to your neighbors, your friends and family, or whoever, and get them registered to vote. This election and all elections are super important to be involved. Your voice does matter. Sorry, my dog is barking. Your voice does matter. So make sure if you are able to vote, please do so.
I would like to add that, not to feel discouraged if you don't have all of the time or all of the information. I feel like in order to fully participate in the democratic process, unfortunately, it's very time consuming. You have to do a lot of research. You have to pay really close attention. Like Maggie said, you have to figure out what sources are credible, what sources aren't credible. So if you're doing a little bit of research, if you're trying even a little bit to engage democratically, I think you deserve huge props. It is very difficult, especially in our current climate, with the pandemic going on, with work, with the uncertainty of work and stuff like that. I think it can be very disheartening for people, and for those of you that are struggling with that, I commend you. I think it's really, really important that you try to engage in any way that you can, and that you don't feel discouraged when people are telling you, do all the research, all this stuff, if you don't have time, because it can be very difficult. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you guys all so much for coming and joining us at our voter summit. It is really important to have these discussions. So I encourage all of you as student leaders, as students, as friends and family to continue these discussions and to spread the word. So thank you again. And if you have any questions or anything, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexa. Thank you everyone on the student panel for participating today, sharing your thoughts, sharing your observations. It's really important to have the student perspective today. So we are very thankful to have you all on this student panel. So again, my name is Amy Kokis, and I am the Associate Director here at the Center for Student Engagement at the University of Nevada, Reno. And I just want to thank everyone for joining this morning for the Voters Summit to hear information from Wayne, from Camille, from Voto Latino, and information from this student panel. We'll be taking a lunch break now and come back for the afternoon sessions from 1 to 3 o'clock. You can select one session in each time frame. We will have some specific sessions so you can share plans and brainstorm ideas for your campus. The Zoom links are in the agenda, so please select the sessions you want to attend this afternoon. Again, if you did not get the agenda, please email me at amyk@unr.edu and we'll get that over to you. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning, and we'll see you all this afternoon.